Morning, everyone. Welcome to AP Live, European History. My name is Todd Beach. I teach AP European History at Eastview High School in Apple Valley, Minnesota. That's a suburb of Minneapolis and St. Paul. It's a beautiful day here in Minneapolis. The sun is shining, and this is Katie.
Good morning. I'm Katie Lancey. I teach at Coral Gables Senior High. It's a suburb of Miami, Florida. The sun is shining here too. It's pretty beautiful, a little bit hot. I know our producer Sarah said it's raining in New York where she is, so I'm sorry about that, but we're really happy to see you guys this morning.
Here's our learning at a glance, and we will be done with review tomorrow. Can you believe it? So today we have Age of Modernity. A lot of what we're doing today, well, Katie will talk about that, but we're kind of setting up for tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a DBQ practice. It's going to be DBQ Friday, so that's very exciting. And then on Monday the 4th, we will go over the feedback from those submitted DBQs. And then a lot of you yesterday started giving us questions. And so we will do a lot of unpacking of questions on the 4th. And then we're also going to do these AP exam tips and reminders. On the 5th next week, we have another DBQ practice that will be virtual proctored. So you'll have a screen with a timer, I believe, and we will get you kind of started. So you have really kind of immerse yourself in that practice. You submit those to us, and then we're going to go over that feedback again so that you know what you're doing well and what you can still do better. And then the same thing Thursday, another DBQ practice, and Katie will virtual proctor that one, and then feedback on that for the 8th. And then we've got some guests coming on the 8th, okay? And that will set you up for your exam on the 13th, and you're going to rock it. It's going to be awesome.
Thanks, Todd. So for today, as you said, yeah, we're getting into setting you up ideologically for what we're going to talk about tomorrow. We're going to talk about Darwinism and social Darwinism and sort of the age of modernity and progress. And then again, tomorrow, the full DBQ that you're going to do to submit for us over the weekend. So for our lesson overview, we've got Darwinism and social Darwinism and the age of modernity and progress. And on the next slide, we have our learning objectives, which we encourage you to pause, and we're not going to read them to you, but you can always pause the video and take a look at them.
Okay, thanks, Katie. Getting to our warm-up, what we left you with practice yesterday was we were talking about outside evidence, how to use outside evidence. And one of the things that we were asking you to do was to include these stems or a stem of your own, something where you state an intention to bring in outside evidence that's going to support your argument. It helps you because you're stating an intention and it kind of gets that thinking going in your head. It helps readers because it's, basically saying, hey, here's what I'm trying to do, Mr. or Miss Reader. So please pay attention to it. Now, these kind of stems, these transition pieces, if we were writing a much more polished piece that wasn't timed, certainly we could be more creative. But what we're trying to do is set you up so that you can show that you're trying to bring in this outside evidence. And I also think once you do that writing intention in your head, it really gets you moving on that. And we also give you two choices. So choice number one was you could go back to the DBQ you wrote from last Friday on Industrial Revolution and add an additional evidence beyond the documents part if you didn't have one. And we wanted you to use a sample stem. And then, or choice two, which a lot of you did. I was really surprised. So well done, you guys. We played a game yesterday, comparative contextualization with producer Sarah. And producer Sarah, we got emails. They loved that, by the way. So, and some of you went and you said, I'll try this harder one. You went back to the game and you brought in, you kind of made up. It was an imagine you're writing a DBQ about Italian unification or German unification, using the information from the game, then construct a paragraph and bring in that outside evidence with those stems. So lots of you turned your stuff in, which was awesome. And we'll get into those responses. This first one's from Michael at Brainerd High School in Minnesota. Brainerd is up in the Lakes region of Minnesota. I don't know if you know this, Katie, but we have a few lakes in Minnesota, just a few.
I've heard that. I've heard that before.
So he does a really nice job. He's in the yellow is that intentional stem, right? Additional evidence that supports the argument that industrialization did not improve the lives of European workers is. So really intentional stated, right? And then he goes on, talks about what that evidence is. The life expectancy of workers, industrial district was significantly lower than in rural districts. And I like that he did this. For example, the average age of death for a laborer or artisan in Manchester was just 17 years compared to the rural district in Rutland, where the average age of death at the same position was 38 years. And I just added this. This So it's kind of like sourcing, right? This is important because this wide life expectancy gap was a result of the decrepit conditions in which laborers had to work and live in industrial centers across Europe. So this has to be more than a phrase or reference, right? And so Michael from Brainerd, you did a really nice job with that. This is from Will at East Rockingham High School in Virginia. Additional evidence to support the argument is the research Edwin Chadwick conducted, which led to the Public Health Act of 1848, after experiencing unsanitary condition in many urban cities, such as, so that's kind of an example, the large deposits of human waste unable to be dealt with safely due to inefficient waste removal methods. Chadwick helped to inform the public and government by releasing this detailed observations of the situations in urban cities. And then I just added that again. This is important because this rallied many to push for reforms because it showed how terrible the living conditions were in industrial cities. Will, East Rockingham High School, Virginia. That is a really nice response. Okay, so take a look at those. This one is from Shawnee at La Sierra High School in California. Again, the yellow is that evidence statement, that really intentional statement. Evidence beyond the documents that should be considered would be how Otto von Bismarck. So she went and she did challenge number 2, right? Otto von Bismarck was able to utilize Prussia's railroads to transfer troops along with the usage of military advancements, such as the breech-loading rifle, to help Prussia win the Austro-Prussian War. This is important because, well done, Shawnee, it shows how Germany's mass productions from the Industrial Revolution helped not only their economy grow, but contributed to victories of the battles that led to the unification of Germany. An additional significant piece of evidence would be how Bismarck was able to feed the desires of liberals by allowing universal male suffrage to elect representatives for the Bundestag. This is important because, again, awesome job. By allowing people to feel represented in their governments, Bismarck sparked a nationalistic feeling in Germans that would eventually help unite northern and southern Germany to defeat France in the Franco-Prussian War and complete the unification of Germany. That is really amazing, Shawnee. I feel like I've read an LEQ right there. Really, really well done. This is from Amelia at Indian Land High School in South Carolina. I think we had Amelia's responses before. You write really well, Amelia. Another example of positive aspects of the Industrial Revolution was shown in Thomas B. Mulcahy's essay. So she's got this from her Industrial Revolution essay that she wrote last Friday. And then she sources that up to document 2, right? So Amelia handles that whole sourcing, and she got the important because, and then ties it off with doc 2. So really nicely done there. Here's an additional piece of evidence that is important to the argument that the Industrial Revolution helped the working class is labor unions. In 1875, trade unions were legal in Britain because of the repealing of the Combination Acts. And then I just added, this is important because if it were not for the Industrial Revolution and the hardship that the working class had to endure for a small time, then they would not have seen better life they could have had and reaped the benefits of having permanent unions that would support them. So that's a really nice response using these pieces, these different stems, bringing in a really rich piece of outside evidence with a nice fact right there. That's really well done. And then this is from Aisha at Blue Valley North High School in Overland Park, Kansas. So Aisha is adding, this was from the DBQ that Aisha wrote last week, and then added to it is this. An additional piece of evidence pulled from outside of the evidence is, like outside of the documents, the trade union movement that had been created after the failure of the Chartist movement in Great Britain. And then I just added this. This is important because they advocated for better working conditions, working class consciousness, unemployment benefits, and more, which Parliament responded by saying they would look into it when in reality they did nothing to better the conditions of workers. And instead, they just regulated things outside of the factories, like the number of hours, as well as regulating poor housing. And I like that you did this, Aisha. Sometimes students will do this. They'll say just regulated things, and then they don't tell us what those things are. But you did the number of hours as well as regulating poor housing. We call those examples, and that's awesome. So those are our responses that we had that dealt with outside evidence. Know that on the DBQ, there are 2 points. So that's, 20% is, can you bring in outside evidence? And we really encourage you to use these stems to state your intention for you and to help state that intention for the reader. So well done for those samples, everybody.
No, those were great. And what I really liked is that I see a lot of students who are falling short because they're not providing really specific examples. And those were really great. Those were great samples. Nice job. So when we get into our lesson today, this is never usually something that students are seeing for the first time in European history with just straight Darwin, but then Todd's probably going to apply it in a different way that sometimes is new for students of AP Euro. So we have our picture there of a young Charles Darwin. There's a lot of pictures of him. They're usually with him much older. And he served as the official naturalist on a 5-year scientific cruise on a boat called the Beagle. Many of you have already learned this before you get to this class. It's going to sail to Latin America and the South Pacific in 1831, and he collects specimens of animals that he encounters. And when he gets back to England, he comes to doubt the belief in the divine creation of each individual species. So he, of course, his theory of evolution was rather that instead of a divine creation, that all life had evolved from a common ancestral origin. And this results in a struggle for survival. He publishes his work on the origin of species. We usually stop there, but the full title is The Origin of Species by the Means of Natural Selection in 1859. And he is actually quite influenced by Malthus, he's our theorist who believed that populations grow more rapidly than the food supply. And because of this, Darwin believed chance differences among individuals, members of a species, would help some survive while others would die. So these variations that prove useful in the struggle for survival are selected naturally and would gradually be spread to the entire species through reproduction. So the theory of evolution with Darwin is usually never new to students in this class, but obviously really important. And then Todd's going to take that theory of evolution and apply it elsewhere.
Okay, thanks, Katie. So Darwin has his theory of evolution. And then what's going to happen next is that we have thinkers, philosophers that are going to take that theory and shape it differently. So Herbert Spencer is going to take Darwin's ideas about human affairs, and he's going to rather apply it to human affairs, claiming that the human race is driven forward to ever greater specialization and progress by a brutal economic struggle that determined the survival of the fittest. Okay. So he's going to apply it to a social setting, which is why we call it social Darwinism. In B, this incorrect view of the poor as ill-fated and weak and the prosperous as the chosen strong will gain adherents among nationalists and among imperialists who will use social Darwinist ideas to justify the rule of the advanced West over their colonial subjects and territories. So in C, the crudest distortions of this incorrect socially constructed theory, and I just need to really hammer that home. It's incorrect, it's socially constructed, and then it's put forward by people who are going to try and champion an idea for their own self-interest. This is going to be used in the 20th century to manipulate, exploit racial conflict. It leads to racist anti-Semitism that became popular with the extreme right in European politics, as you know, especially in the 20th century. Take a look at our source here. This is titled The Pigtail Has to Go. It's from Puck magazine of 1898. And the print shows a female figure labeled civilization, pulling the pigtail labeled worn out traditions of a man labeled China. And so this is supposed to be Columbia or civilization, and we are impure and white and everything is innocent and correct. And we're trying to impose values on other societies. And this idea of social Darwinism is portrayed in this image. And again, I just have to really stress to you how incorrect these ideas are.
Thanks, Todd. For our guided practice, we're going to look at another visual that's also from the same magazine. And I can't stress enough what Todd said. They're not just incorrect. Many of the images that come out of this time period, because of what we're going to talk about in our lesson tomorrow with the scramble for Africa, they are just blatantly, horribly racist. So, so social Darwinism gets applied as a justification for a lot of what's going to happen when we talk about imperialism tomorrow. And so this is from the same magazine. And Puck was an American magazine. It was a historical, satirical magazine. And this is by an American political cartoonist. And he was also a Native American activist. So if you were going to source this, there's some interesting things you could talk about for him. And it's called From the Cape to Cairo. And the caption that's on the bottom that's really hard to read says, from the Cape to Cairo, though the process be costly, the road of progress must be cut. And what you're seeing in there is, again, dressed in white, this civilization. And this is actually the personification of Great Britain in this picture. And we see on the other side the flag of barbarism. So it's always this idea that we have the white person coming to overcome the barbarism and bring civilization, bring light to uncivilized people. And the message kind of suggests that the indigenous people are going to be brought out of ignorance through this march of progress. And if you can see, civilization has white men with sophisticated weapons. And on the other side, we have dark skin and spears and very like sort of, elementary weapons. So, and this was very much a thought process during this time, this social Darwinism being applied as they go in. And this is right after the Boer War. And this is going to be something we're going to talk about more tomorrow. But it's this ideology of social Darwinism and this bringing of civilization to this sort of white man's burden to the native peoples. So again, it's very racist.
Yeah, and that's a really good job of unpacking that for them. And just a reminder to everybody, you will have a visual source on your DBQ. There'll be one tomorrow. And part of that is your ability to describe what the claim is in that source. So that's really, really nicely done, Katie. We're going to keep transitioning now to kind of social sciences. And this is going to be this contextualization piece that gets us into the 20th century and helps set up this the things that we're going to be unpacking tomorrow. We'll begin with this portrait of Max Weber. Weber, it looks like Weber, but in German it would be pronounced Weber. He founded the discipline of sociology, who called himself the enemy of the squires and championed the cause of social and economic reform in Germany circa 1910. And his most famous work is The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. So I'm critical of his work, but we'll get into that. So here we go. By the 1880s, Europe's major universities had been modernized, professionalized. Education emphasized controlled research projects, which is why a lot of universities are founded these days. And faculty devoted to newly instituted human or social sciences that took their place along the hard sciences. The hard sciences being like biology and chemistry. And now we have these social sciences. Sociology is the critical analysis of contemporary or historical social groups, emerged as a leading social science. Sociology actually is very much in play in our contemporary world, especially during this pandemic. You just certainly need to watch the news, and we have social distancing measures in place, and we have people pushing back against that. That kind of study of how people behave in these groups, that's sociology. So the German socialist Max Weber argued the Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism in 1890, that the rise of capitalism in Northern Europe is a direct link to Protestant values of hard work. Okay. My first issue here is that he makes the claim that it is, that Protestants only get to hold the value of hard work, but saving and investing and the foundations for capitalist development. This success was a sign of God's approval, according to Max Weber. The argument is challenging the basic ideas of Marxism, which we have unpacked, right? To Weber, these ideas were just as important as economics or class struggle and the rise of capitalism. So you have Marxism talking about working people and class struggle, and you have Weber talking about Protestant values, hard work, saving, investing, and capitalist development. In some ways, it pits, capitalist versus worker, these two ideas a little bit. And the French sociologist Emile Durkheim will earn an international reputation for the elementary forms of religious life, study of psychic and social basis of religion. And he also writes Suicide, a quantitative sociology that includes growing suicides rates were caused by widespread feelings of anomie, the disappearance of norms and values. This feeling like there is nothing morally right to follow anymore. So it's interesting when you apply these types of social thinking alongside what Weber is saying. Freud is going to come in about this time as well. There's the German Ferdinand Tönnies that argues that industrialization has transformed European civilization from community to society, replacing traditional values with rationalized self-interest and leading to intensified alienization. What Tönnies is talking about is we were in small villages or like communities. And then with industrialization, we've moved to large cities. And now we are in no longer these real kind of community settings. He's arguing that this is larger in society. And within that, we are only after our own self-interests. And because of that, he argues, we are increasingly alienated from values of community. Similar to this, in The Crowd, French sociologist Gustave Le Bon wrote that the alienated masses are prone to gathering in mass crowds. If they felt alienated, then they want to connect, in which individuals lost control of their emotions and actions and could easily be manipulated by a charismatic leader. So I want you to think about what's coming in the 20th century and this new thinking. Indeed, the new sociologists acknowledge some benefits of urban industrial society, such as rationalization and modernization, but they bemoan the loss of community and traditions, the idea of connecting with others and feeling a part of something. So in some ways, the diagnosis of the modern individual as an isolated atom seeking human connection was chillingly looking forward to the powerful communist and fascist movements that were going to emerge after World War I, seemed to win popular support by offering people a renewed sense of belonging, right? So there are this need, these sociologists are talking about this need for people to connect and feel a part of community. And when they feel alienated, and what's kind of left out of this is the Great Depression, and when you are finding a difficult way to make ends meet, then these powerful ideas that move people into one sense of belonging are going to gain a lot of traction in the 20th century. Okay, so that's kind of an unpacking a little bit of that as we kind of get into the idea of imperialism with social Darwinism we did a little bit earlier.
All right, so if we look at our key takeaways, we explain how Darwin's theories influence scientific and social developments. There was social Darwinism, and how science and other intellectual disciplines developed and changed. And so you can read our historical thinking skills, and we're definitely still looking at causation and cause and effect as our reasoning development. And so for your practice today, this is the last practice of homework you have, except for full DBQs leading up to this AP exam on May 13th. So I want to do a nod back to our lesson yesterday and give you an LEQ prompt and have you do contextualization and thesis for it, which is, of course, how you're also going to begin the document-based question that you can practice tomorrow, that we have 2 practice opportunities for you next week, and then May 13th, the big exam. So for this prompt, I want you to look back at what we talked about yesterday at German and Italian unification, and I want you to evaluate the most significant difference between the unification of Germany and the unification of Italy in the 19th century. We're looking for you to do contextualization and end that paragraph with a thesis or claim, and don't forget to please have a line of reasoning for your answer. And then submit your responses as you have been to that email you can see, apeurovirtuallearning@gmail.com, and we will look at some exemplar responses tomorrow. And then also I'll give you some examples of things that aren't quite hitting the bar so you can have a better idea of where that line is. But we've been really impressed at all the work that you've done, and we're getting to the end. We're almost there. So your last small homework before 3 opportunities to do full timed practice between now and next week.
We recognize that some of you have questions, and so we have this slide up here. We're gonna, on Monday, May 4th, we're gonna be sharing exam tips and reminders, and we are gonna talk through exam day procedures. Katie and I were on a webinar last night to talk about exam day procedures. So we want to make sure that you feel ready. If you have specific questions you want us to address, send your question to this email and put the word question in the subject line. Please include your first name, school, and state or country. A lot of you did this yesterday. We're holding those questions, and we are going to answer and respond to every one of them on Monday, May 4th, and then probably again on the 6th, which is Wednesday, May 6th. So
Yep.
We'll make sure that we get through all your questions and that you feel super ready for everything that's coming at you on May 13th. Okay, my turn for the shout out. So I was super excited. This first one,
the goat. Okay.
what's that?
I'm looking at
I know.
Blazer the goat.
I
What's
know it
that?
is. They're awesome. Dublin High School, Dublin, California. Of course, there's a very Irish feel to that. They're home of the Gaels, like Gaelic. So I
I
just
like
thought
it.
that's an awesome name. Great Neck North High School in Great Neck, New York. Blazer the Goat is the mascot of Great Neck North. And then Blue Valley North High School, Overland Park, Kansas. They are the Mustangs. And Katie, I included this one because Overland Park is really not that far away from Kansas City, Missouri.
I know.
And Kansas City, Missouri is where we normally do the reading for AP European History and for AP World History. And we are obviously not going to be in Kansas City this year. It'll be a virtual read, but it's a nod to, I know it's from Kansas and Kansas City's in Missouri, but it's a nod to that so that everyone knows that we do appreciate going to the reading, and we're sad that we're not going to go this year.
Absolutely. All right.
Okay, everybody, we're really, really glad that you joined us today. And I'm really, oh, by the way, producer Sarah, so many loved you in the game yesterday.
They
So
did.
you
They
are
did.
quite the hit.
I hope you guys have a great day, and we look forward to that full DBQ practice tomorrow. Be well.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.